Look around you. Here in the 7th Cavalry, we have a captain from the Ukraine and another from Puerto Rico. We have Japanese, Chinese, blacks, Hispanics, Cherokee Indians, Jews and Gentiles, all Americans. Now in this unit, some men may face discrimination because of race or creed, but for you and me now, that is gone. We are moving into the valley of the shadow of death, where you will watch the back of the man next to you as he will watch yours, and you won't care what color he is, what race he is, or by what name he calls God. They say that we're leaving home. We're going into what home was always supposed to be. So let's try and understand the situation. We're going into battle against a tough and determined enemy. And I can't guarantee that I can bring you all back home alive. But this, I swear, before you and before Almighty God, that I will be the first to set foot onto that field, and I will be the last to step off. And I will leave no one behind. Dead or alive, we are all coming home together. So help me God.
Please stand for the presentation of the flags, followed by the singing of the national anthem by a very special guest from the hit TV show The Voice, Trey Odell.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Welcome to our 11th annual Hour with the Hero ceremony. We are pleased to introduce to you Mr. Derl Horne.
Derl Horne is a native of Springdale and a graduate of Springdale High School. He spent 39 years as an industrial engineer with Cooper Power Incorporated. He married his high school sweetheart, Marilyn Buchanan Horne, and they have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. He served our country through the U.S. Marine Corps from 1966 through 1968, taking his basic training at the Marine Recruiting Depot in San Diego and advancing training at Camp Pendleton, California. He was stationed at Camp Lejeune, New York, where he was deployed for 5 months to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and 10 months in Vietnam. Derl received a Purple Heart and Combat Action Medals for his actions and wounds received during Operation Buffalo, and a Presidential Unit Citation. In March 2015, Derl completed and published the book Blood, Sweat, and Honor, Memoirs of a Walking Dead Marine in Vietnam, sharing his military experience.
I'm not sure which mic I'm using, but that one, I guess. Good morning, Har-Ber students and faculty. It's good to be here with you. It's a good day. I know this is probably better than being in class, right? And a special welcome to our veterans and their families and friends. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service. I'd like to give a special thank you to Mrs. Lyndon Chanel for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share in this Veterans Celebration. And I also want to thank the faculty and students that had any part in putting this event together, and I know many have. Thank you all very much. I am Derl Horne, a combat veteran of the Vietnam War, and I'm a proud American. I'm here today with my lovely wife, Marilyn. She's down here pretty close. I'm blessed to have this woman as my wife for many years, and we celebrate another great year this year on the 30th of this month. Happy anniversary, honey, a little early. Thank you all for joining me as we recognize our veterans for their unwavering service to America. It's an honor and a privilege for me to stand before you on this Veterans Day as we pay tribute to all veterans who have served in our great nation. Being a veteran is one of the greatest honors of my life. Veterans Day is a day not only to remember those who died in service to our country, but also to recognize those who continue to serve today. President Ronald Reagan once said, "Most of those who died in defense of our country were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. They gave up their chance to be fathers and grandfathers, husbands. They gave up everything for their country, for us. All we can do is remember, and today we are remembering. We've been blessed with generations of brave men and women who have sacrificed their time, their service, and their lives so we can continue to enjoy our freedoms. If not for these brave men and women, the world we live in today would be a very different place. To each veteran, I want to say thank you for your service to our great nation, the United States of America. From 1962 through 1975, around 3 million of our men and women left our homes to serve our country in Vietnam. 20% of us went into combat roles. The rest were in support roles. There were 58,479 men and women killed in action. Another 1,600 became prisoners of war or were declared missing in action. It's heartbreaking for me to say to you that most of those are still missing. Over 150,000 of us veterans were combat wounded. Some had wounds that could be seen, but many wounds were unseen. As most people know, we did not come home from Vietnam to a hero's welcome or patriotic rallies of support. Instead, we were greeted with confusion, anger, and resentment from our fellow citizens. We were blamed for a war that consumed America for over 10 years. It was a sad time in our history, and I pray that this never happens again. Like many veterans who were involved in different wars, I didn't talk about my experiences for over 35 years. Most people I worked with did not even know that I had served in Vietnam until I was interviewed by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette for a profile page. After the story was published, I had many friends and coworkers call and come by. They wanted to know why I had not shared that I was a Vietnam veteran. I told them I didn't share because it was difficult to talk about my combat experiences, and it was not a popular topic when we returned home. We were not welcome. I am happy that attitudes have changed in the last 10 years or so, at least for me. I've been thanked many times for my service. I realize it's overdue, but I do appreciate it. Today, people recognize me as a veteran because of the caps and shirts that I wear with the insignia, and because of the Wounded in Action Purple Heart license plates that are on my vehicles. It's so encouraging for me to see the welcome home that our young military men and women receive nowadays as they return home from war. I want to encourage you young students to be patriotic. Support your military. You know, our country has problems, but we're still the best country. Remember to always stand and show support for your flag and when our national anthem is played. I was impressed the way y'all did it today. Recently, I was thanked while Marilyn and I were in a coffee shop. I had stepped outside to take a call, and as I talked on the phone, there was a young lady that walked by. She looked at me and smiled as she went into the coffee shop. And I'm thinking, she thinks she knows me, but I don't know her. After I finished my conversation, I went back into the coffee shop. And then this young lady came over to me, took my hands, looked me in the eyes, and she said, "I just want to thank you for your service. And I want you to know that we appreciate you." I was really caught off guard, even though I appreciated her kindness. And I was a little bit embarrassed. I didn't know what to say or do. I finally think all I said was just, "Thank you, ma'am." I hope that many of our veterans have had similar experiences. All veterans have stories that should be told to family and friends about their experiences. And I've chosen to tell mine in a book titled Blood, Sweat, and Honor, Memoirs of a Walking Dead Marine in Vietnam. I wrote this book at the request of family and friends who had asked me to share some of my experiences. Well, after writing for a while, I decided maybe I'd just make it a book. So 9 years later, it became a book. I wrote this book not only for family, but I wanted to show other veterans that you can survive after war without turning to drugs and alcohol to block out the combat experiences. And I wanted to show that it was possible to go on and have a productive life afterwards. I especially wanted to share how God guided and protected me during this time. This book has been very therapeutic and healing for me. Along with writing this book and having some counseling at the VA about my experiences, I am now able to talk about my combat experiences. And now I always encourage my fellow veterans to talk to others and maybe even write something, because it really does help. One of the most commonly used phrases during the Vietnam War was the words, "It don't mean nothing." I'm sure many veterans have said this or have heard it said at some point. This was simply a coping mechanism, a way to hide the fear, the anger, the pain, all the bleeding and rice paddies and dying on hills that we would take one day and then have to return and retake on another day. and we always lost precious lives in doing this. The real truth is that all of life events actually do matter. They do mean something. We have to learn to deal with our past and make the best of it. Most family and friends want to know what we went through, but are afraid to ask. It might surprise you veterans to learn how much it helps you and your families to share your story. I chose the title Blood, Sweat, and Honor for my book because of all the blood spilled in the country of Vietnam trying to stop the spreading of communism. Sweat was chosen because we were always just a bunch of sweaty, grungy, dirty kids, maybe a couple of years older than you guys and gals. We went without baths weeks on end. We didn't take our boots off at night because we had a 24/7 job, and we had to be ready for the next battle. The honor part was because I saw so many great men serve with honor, many even to their death. The Walking Dead Marine subtitle comes from North Vietnam's General Gnap, the leader of the North Vietnam military, who had vowed to wipe out my unit, 1st Battalion, 9th Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division, because we had caused so much havoc for them, and we had defeated them in many, many battles. But General Gnap was so confident that he tagged us dead men walking. He really thought he could wipe us out, and he almost did, but we prevailed. Thus our battalion attained the title of The Walking Dead. This is not the TV series that y'all watch. We are the real Walking Dead, and we wear this title with pride. Another reason for this title was because our battalion had more killed in action than any other battalion in Vietnam. And I want to show you. This is my story. I have books available. They're also on Amazon. And that's my commercial for today. The reality of Vietnam set in for me at first while I stood on the tarmac in Okinawa and watched large black body bags being unloaded from the plane that would soon transport me to Vietnam. I knew that we were the replacements for these men who had been killed in action. I had a terrible sinking feeling, along with a sharp pain of the reality that some of us standing there waiting to board this plane would also be returning in body bags. And I'm sad to say, way too many did. My first day in the field of Vietnam, my company was caught in a mortar attack by our own people, thinking we were the enemy. My second day in the field, we were ambushed by the Viet Cong. My company fought and killed all of the enemy except for 2 that we captured. During the battle, one of our Marines was killed and 3 others were wounded. At this point, I was saying, actually I was praying, Lord, if it's going to be like this every day, how do I survive? And as you combat veterans know, some days were better, some days were worse. I'm thankful to God to be here today, but I still mourn for my brothers who paid the ultimate sacrifice. About a month later, my company of 150 Marines were on a search and destroy mission out along the demilitarized zone. The operation was called Buffalo. We met up with 5 battalion of the North Vietnam Army. That amounts to about 5,000 enemy soldiers. The odds, as you can see, weren't good. 150 of us Marines versus 5,000 enemy soldiers. By the time reinforcements arrived, 59 men in my company had been killed and another 65 critically wounded. I was fortunate to be one of the 26 survivors, and all of us survivors had been wounded at least once, some twice. I'd been wounded twice. The critically wounded were medevaced out, and I was never sure what happened to most of them, except for 2 that returned to our company a couple of months later. One of those Marines was my good buddy named Ronnie Fields. Ronnie had jumped out in front of me during the battle, taking 2 bullets and saving my life. Ronnie deserved the highest award for heroism and valor for this act of putting his own life at risk for a fellow Marine. He did not receive any recognition for his bravery. But there were many acts of heroism that day that were never recognized, primarily because there were no officers to report the acts of heroism. They had all been killed in the battle. There were just a few of us left fighting for each other and for our own lives. All across America, I'm sure there are many Ronnies who never received any recognition for their bravery. There's probably one in here, in this room today. I feel that I'm here today because of prayer. God spared my life because I had so many family members and friends back home praying for me. And I think maybe God just wasn't finished with me, and He's still working on me. My tour in Vietnam started in May of 1967 and ended in February of 1968. I came home on a snowy Valentine's Day to my beautiful wife and 2 1/2-month-old twin daughters that I'd never seen. It was the best day of my life. A few years ago, my wife and I visited the war memorials in Washington, D.C. The Vietnam Memorial Wall is special to me. Veterans and family members, if you haven't visited your memorial, I highly suggest that you go. I didn't want to go at first because I didn't think I could handle it emotionally, and it was very difficult. But I'm glad that I did because I was privileged to honor those 58,479 veterans that paid the ultimate sacrifice. Each one of those names on the wall represents an individual and their families. It's hard to imagine all the hurt and grief caused by those deaths. I have many friends on that wall. On one block of that wall are the names of 59 of my buddies. They were all killed in one day, on July 2nd, 1967, during an operation called Buffalo. I might tell you all here, in case you didn't know, Marines don't cry. Sometimes their eyes sweat. That's what's happening. I believe it's never too late to pay tribute to our veterans who served and continue to serve with valor, courage, and honor during the wars and even peacetime. Today, we want to honor all of our veterans who have answered the call to our great nation and have become productive members of our communities, making this nation a better place. We also need to thank God not only for the gift of life, but for the gift of our veterans who have given something of themselves to this country. You know, through all our nation's history, over 1.3 million have given all, laying down their lives to defend the freedoms that we hold so dear. Thank you all for being here today and for listening to me, for celebrating with our veterans. May God bless you. May God bless our veterans. May God continue to bless the United States of America. And on behalf of a grateful nation, I would like to salute each veteran and say thank you and welcome home. Thank you. Your turn.
At this time, we would like to thank our Veteran of the Hour, Derl Horne, for sharing his story with us. We are so honored to have you here today. Presenting a special thank you is our very own Har-Ber High recruiter, Sergeant Brown. Let's give a round of applause to recognize all of the veterans in our audience and those who cannot be with us today. On behalf of Har-Ber East, thank you for attending today. You are now dismissed to fourth period.